So we're here tonight, obviously, to talk about the intelligent organisation, and John has invited some very top speakers to give you an insight to how his work has helped their organisation. And our first speaker tonight is Alan Thompson. So Alan has more than 20 years of executive experience in the IT and consumer electronics industry. Most recently, over 5 years as the president of Toshiba, based in Germany. The bios tonight are very short because we've got to cram everyone. So please welcome Alan to the stage.
Thank you for that enormous build-up. Yes, I guarantee to disappoint. Anyway, I was very pleased to be on the receiving end of a lot of the thoughts that were in the build-up to this book, and by some strange quirk of fate, I actually found them helpful. So John has invited me to actually mention why. First of all, I believe the world is very complicated. There's all sorts of things going on all of the time. And what I find very helpful as an executive is when people help me to make things simple and to make sense. And actually, I was given this diagram, which has got very, very few words on it, which actually I could actually comprehend. But this is an example of a SOBO, you know, a statement of the blooming obvious. You can use other phrases if you wish. But it's I've been 12 years as a chief executive officer of a company, and this diagram was put in front of me, and I suddenly realized that I couldn't answer the question of how much time I spend in each of those three boxes. And when I started to look, I found very shocking and surprising things, and I found that actually, as an organization, we were very good at managing the present. We were very good. In fact, we were very highly organized at it. We had all sorts of review meetings, and we even reviewed periodic forecasts for the next few months, which I interpreted as the future. But in fact, it isn't. It's actually managing the past. They're not doing anything about the future. And I also discovered that all of the people who control the resources in the organization were managing the present. It's a real sort of horror story. So we started to work on looking at the future, trying to be less threat and more opportunity driven, and also trying to get away from being triggered into action by failure. But we also recognized that the way we used to deal with those situations was to challenge different departments. We'd divide something up, and then we'd give the challenge, and then we'd sort of hope that it all sort of worked together. And the idea of nurturing identity was quite, as a sort of personal person, as it were, I think a lot about identity and values. But as a business, how do we do it? And actually, we ran a session about values, and one of the values that that people thought was the value of our company was success. It's wonderful, isn't it? The idea that success is a value at all, but people seem to think it was. So we actually set up a group to manage strategy. You know, they had the time to do it. They were available. They were reasonably senior, but actually they didn't have the clout to do anything about it. So we actually created them as a backup team and got the executive team together who had the influence of power. You either have people who have the time, or you have the people who have the power, and somehow you've got to get both of those. And we started the process of culture change. This is some years ago. But then we began to realize that, hang on a minute, yes, we're now beginning to unpack this, but actually we divide up all of the challenges into departments or business units. And they were coming up with their own answer. And what we weren't doing is trying to break through the barriers between the various business units in order to come up with solutions that were more orientated to what the customer wanted and not to what the business units wanted to provide. And we started information sharing. We got multicultural, multi-business unit groups. I mean, initially they kind of sat in the room and sort of growled and frowned at one another, and eventually, you know, they began to talk, and the result was that we began to change the culture to be more collaborative and to focus also on the business model. But then the real scary thing is that we were starting to come up with ideas that we thought were innovative and that managed the future. But now, what about this group of people over here called the customer? And that was the point at which it really started to get scary to actually implement this. How do you create value? How do you develop strategy that's integrated and then make sure that it's actually what customers value? By the way, don't worry about this diagram. This one's complicated and I don't understand it at all. The most important thing to realize is we're over here, the customers are over here, there's lots of stuff going on, and the key thing is you've got to do the middle bit, which is you've got to bring the customer, what the customer is worried about and what we are capable of doing together somehow, and stimulate the result before you do it. And a final point is the importance of information systems. I work for a company that is an information systems associated company, Toshiba, and yet what we discovered is that we weren't very good at managing information within our own operation. For example, I had part of my empire at that time was involved in manufacturing organisation, or what had been a manufacturing organisation in southern Germany, and they had about 300 or 400 people in there. And actually, I discovered when I shook the tree that there were actually 5 unofficial IT departments in that one building. 5, in addition to the official IT department. And why was that? Because all the various functions had been put under enormous challenge over the years to grow fast, to move quickly, to do what's required to get the job done, and they couldn't get the IT department to provide them with the service they needed. So what did they do? They did the only thing they could to keep their jobs. They got their job done anyway. And you know, we weeded these people out. And we have actually now created a unified structure finally after a long time. We also decided that we're going to focus a bit less on process, structure and design. We were very good at that. Decision making we could do, you know. We could issue instructions, we could be decisive. But actually what we couldn't do was to change the way that people behaved. And the starting point was to improve our information systems. The second thing we did was to create actually a function that is responsible for culture change. Now you may think that won't work. Maybe it won't. But it's a step in the right direction, and people have finally agreed that we need to change the culture of the company. And that needs to involve focusing more on the values, skills and behaviours of the people instead of on just the things that we do. So that's a flavour. I would say that we're still on a journey. It's an exciting one. We've sampled the simple end of John's book. We're about chapter 1.5, you know, and there's more stuff to come. But I can say it's been very helpful, and it has actually worked so far. So, the end, thankfully, or thank you. There are no questions.
No, we have questions. We have questions. We've got time for maybe 1 or 2 questions.
Thank you very much.